comes a strange point in life. It doesn't strike like lightning. There is no explosion. No one walks into the room and tells you, from this day forward, the old version of you begins to die. It comes quietly, so quietly that at first you think you're just tired. You don't feel like talking as much. You don't feel like explaining yourself anymore. You don't feel like laughing along with the same old stories. The people who once felt familiar suddenly feel like strangers. The conversations that once made you feel like you belonged now feel like a room running out of air. And yet you still sit there. You still listen. You still nod. But somewhere inside, a part of you has stopped joining in. You are present, but you are no longer really there. And that is the first sign, not a sign of coldness, not a sign of arrogance, but a sign that the mask has begun to loosen. Like an old cowboy sitting by the fire at sundown, you don't announce your departure. You just feel it in your bones. Something in you is done riding with the herd. At first, you may think you are changing for the worse. You wonder why you are no longer as patient as you used to be. Why the jokes that once made you laugh now sound empty. Why the compliments that once warmed your heart now carry the scent of calculation. Why the relationships that once made you feel safe now make you feel watched. But the truth is, you haven't lost your ability to connect. You have only lost your ability to lie to yourself. And this is the frightening part. When a person begins to wake up, the first thing they lose is not other people. They lose the version of themselves that used to survive through other people. The version that always knew how to please. The version that always knew when to stay silent. The version that always smiled so the room wouldn't get tense. The version that always said, "It's okay," while something inside was being worn down to the bone. That version was once called sweet. It was once called mature. It was once called well-behaved. But in truth, it was only a survival strategy dressed up as morality. And that is where it hurts. You may not have been as kind as you thought. Maybe you were just afraid of being abandoned. You may not have been as forgiving as you thought. Maybe you were just afraid of conflict. You may not have been always strong the way people kept praising you. Maybe you were simply never allowed to fall apart. Jung would look straight into this part of you and call it by an uncomfortable name, the persona, social mask, the face you offer to the world in order to be accepted, not because you are fake in some cruel way, but because you learned very early that if you wanted to be loved, certain parts of you had to disappear. Your anger had to disappear. Your honesty had to disappear. Your ambition had to disappear. Your need for respect had to disappear. Your ability to say no had to disappear. And then you called that disappearance character. You called self-erasure kindness. You called emotional submission love. You called self-betrayal maturity. That is the quietest tragedy of the human soul. People do not die because they don't know how to live. They slowly die because they became too damn good at adapting. Like an old rider who spent years following every trail others marked for him. One day you realize the saddle fits, boots still shine, the horse still walks forward, but the man riding it is no longer free. There is one detail you are overlooking. The people around you often do not love your real self as much as you think they do. They love the stability your old version provided for them. They love that you were predictable. They love that you were easy to make peace with. They love that you always came back after being taken for granted. They love that you adjusted your own emotions so they would not have to face their own immaturity. So, when you begin to change, they do not only lose you, they lose the convenience you once gave them. That is when the small reactions begin to appear. A joke with a hidden blade, a strange look, a deliberate silence, a voice that becomes a little less warm, a comment that seems accidental but lands with perfect aim on one of your old wounds. They will say, You've been so different lately. No, you are not different. You are just no longer as easy to use as before, and this is something very few people dare to admit. Many relationships are not built on love, but on an invisible contract. You keep being pleasant, and I keep loving you. You keep staying silent, and I keep seeing you as a good person. You keep needing me, and I keep feeling important. You keep making yourself smaller, and I keep feeling bigger. No one ever signed that contract. Everyone can feel it when it gets torn apart. The moment you stop playing the old role, the temperature in the room changes. The person who is used to you explaining yourself starts feeling irritated when you stay silent. The person who is used to you apologizing starts feeling uneasy when you stand still. The person who is used to your softness begins calling your clarity cruel. And here is the first twist. They are not angry because you changed. They are angry because you no longer serve the psychological role they assigned to you. Some people only love you as long as you stay in the right place inside their imagination. The moment you step out of that place, they call you the problem. Do not be naive. Not everyone who claps for your healing truly wants to see you free. Many people support your growth only as long as that growth does not cost them control. They want you to hurt less, but they do not want you to become stronger. They want you to be at peace, but they do not want you to have boundaries. They want you to be happy, but they do not want you to move beyond their influence. Human beings are strange that way. They can feel sorry for your pain, yet feel threatened by your strength. Because your pain makes them feel safe, but your strength forces them to look at their own stagnation, and then you will see it clearly. They are not reacting to your maturity. They are reacting to the fact that they can no longer control you the way they used to. Because many relationships only survive as long as you keep playing your assigned role. Like an old gunslinger who finally stops lowering his eyes at the saloon door, you are not starting a fight. You are simply no longer handing over your weapon just to keep the room comfortable. If you have ever been exhausted from being easy to love just to be accepted, comment, "I've been acting for too long." This is the part many people cannot bear in the awakening journey. Growth does not only help you understand yourself more deeply, it also makes you see other people more clearly. And sometimes, seeing clearly feels like punishment. You begin to notice how people change their tone when there is power in the room. You see how quickly loyalty disappears when convenience comes to an end. You see that some people are only kind when kindness helps them protect their image. You see that some people call themselves honest, but they are only honest when they have nothing to lose. You see people use morality like a set of clothes. They put it on when there is an audience. They take it off when there is something to gain. You see it, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once awareness walks in, unconsciousness can no longer feel like home. You cannot go back to sleep in a room where the lights have already been turned on. And this is the coldest part. You also begin to see yourself, not the beautiful version you keep telling stories about, not the version that says, "I am just a good person who got hurt," not the version that says, "I simply love too much," but the more complicated version, the naked version, the version that is harder to forgive. You begin to realize that part of your kindness was once fear, part of your patience was once avoidance, part of your love was once dependency, part of your sacrifice was once a quiet way of buying the feeling of being needed. And this sentence hurts. Not everyone who sacrifices is noble. Some people sacrifice because they do not know who they are when they are not needed. That is when the shadow begins to rise. The shadow is not the devil inside you. The shadow is every part of you that was buried because you once believed it would make you unlovable. Buried anger, the buried pride, buried desire, buried sharpness, the buried instinct to protect yourself. Buried healthy selfishness. You buried these parts to keep connection, but what gets buried does not die. It only learns how to speak through symptoms: resentment, exhaustion, bitterness, sudden explosions, sudden coldness, irritation over the smallest things. One day you are no longer angry about what is happening right now. You are angry on behalf of every time you once stayed silent. The explosion did not begin today. It began many years ago. You are only hearing the blast much later, and when the shadow returns, you will be afraid of it. Because the part that has been suppressed often does not know how to walk gently when it first comes back. It returns rough, hard, extreme. It may make you want to cut everyone off, to go silent on everyone, punish everyone who once failed to see you. But that is not freedom yet. That is only the shadow demanding its room back. Freedom is not becoming cold. Freedom is no longer having to pretend to be warm. Freedom is not leaving everyone. Freedom is no longer abandoning yourself just to keep them. Freedom is not becoming some shiny, powerful, perfect new person. Freedom is having the courage to meet the parts of yourself that were once sent into exile. And here's the second twist. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to the parts of yourself that were left behind. But returning is never smooth. It is like stepping into an old house you locked up years ago. Dust is everywhere. The air smells damp. There are objects you do not want to look at. There are memories you thought had disappeared, but they were only standing still in the dark, waiting for you to become mature enough to come back. And when you return, you understand something. The mind never forgot. The body never forgot. The nervous system never forgot. A single sentence can hurt you too deeply, not because it is too big, but because it touches an old wound. A silence can send you into panic, not because the other person is truly abandoning you, but because inside you, there's a child who was left alone for too long. A criticism can make you collapse, not because you are weak, but because it awakens a memory of being humiliated before you had the language to defend yourself. Human beings do not react to the present as much as they think they do. They react to the past, wearing the clothes of the present. That is why two people can stand in the same room and live in two completely different psychological worlds. One person hears silence and feels peace. Another person hears silence and feels abandoned. One person hears feedback and sees a chance to improve. Another person hears feedback and feels humiliated. The event is the same. The wounds are different. Meaning changes everything. Jung did not need to turn this into a complicated lecture. Just look closely and you will see it. Very few people are truly speaking to you. They are speaking to their memories through you. They are loving their past through you. They are fearing their past through you. They are punishing some ghost while wearing your face as the target. And sometimes you do the same. This is the kind of awareness that makes a person less arrogant. You are not awakened just because you can see through other people. You only begin to awaken when you realize you were once just as unconscious as they are. Some people call control responsibility. Some people call dependency love. Some people call jealousy care. Some people call cowardice peace. Some people call the fear of living truthfully being well-behaved. But pretty names do not make the truth any cleaner. A golden cage is still a cage, and out here, on the wild edge of your own soul, you finally understand. Some prisons do not have iron bars. Some prisons are built from approval, duty, silence, and the sweet little lies people clap for because they keep you tame. And the most dangerous part of identity death begins here. You no longer trust the names people give things. You look at the function. You do not just listen when people say they love you. You watch whether that love makes you expand or shrink. You do not just listen when people say they respect you. You watch how they react when you say no. You do not just listen when people say they want what is best for you. You watch whether they become uncomfortable when what is best for you means you no longer need them the way you used to. Truth is not found in words. Truth is found in the reaction that appears when someone's benefit is touched. There are people who are only gentle as long as they still have control. There are people who only love you when you remain predictable. There are people who are only kind when you stay smaller than them. And when you grow, they no longer know how to love you, because they never truly loved you. They loved your position inside their system. This does not make you hate them. It makes you awake. But waking up is not comfortable. Waking up means losing many illusions that once helped you sleep at night. The illusion that everyone close to you is sincere. The illusion that everyone who has stayed for years truly understands you. The illusion that everyone who says they love you wants you to be free. The illusion that if you are good enough, life will treat you fairly. But truth is not that gentle. Life does not reward kindness if that kindness has no backbone. People without boundaries are not loved more. They are simply used longer. And this is the frightening part. Once you realize this, the way you show up begins to change. You no longer open the door of your soul to anyone who knows how to knock. You no longer over-explain yourself just to keep others from misunderstanding you. You no longer laugh to soften someone else's disrespect. You no longer shrink yourself just so the room does not feel threatened. You begin to spend your energy more carefully. And the people who were used to spending that energy for free will call you selfish. Let them call you that. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always experience your boundaries as an insult. Do not expect them to clap when you take your keys back. Do not expect someone living in your house for free to feel grateful when you change the locks. This is when loneliness appears. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from having no one beside you, but the kind of loneliness that comes from no longer finding yourself in the old places. You sit among familiar people and feel like you are listening to a play that has been performed too many times. Someone shows off confidence, but you see the fear of being invisible underneath. Someone talks about loyalty, but you hear the fear of abandonment. Someone acts moral, but you see the hunger for recognition. Someone laughs loudly, but underneath is a nervous system begging to be noticed. You do not hate them. You simply see too much. And seeing too much can make a person tired. Sometimes you wish you were a little more foolish. You wish you could go back to believing everything was simple. You wish the words "I'm fine" were still enough for you to believe. You wish a smile could still be just a smile. You wish a compliment did not sound like a strategy. But you cannot go back. Awareness is a one-way door. Once you step through it, you do not return untouched, and at this point, a gap opens. A gap between two selves. This is the part very few people speak about honestly. When the old identity dies, the new identity does not immediately appear like a king stepping onto a throne. There is no golden light, no victorious music, no magical feeling of, "At last I have found myself," like those polished quotes on the internet. No, in between there is a white space, empty, cold, silent. You are no longer the old person, but you do not yet know who you are. You no longer want to go back, but you do not yet know where to go. You can no longer tolerate falseness, but truth has not yet given you a home. You can clearly see that the old roles are dead, but no new role feels real enough to wear. And in that emptiness, the ego begins to panic. It wants a name, a label, a role, a relationship, an ideal, a story to hold on to. Because without an identity, a human being feels like they are falling. That is why so many people rush to find a new mask right after the old one falls. They leave the role of the pleasant one and put on the role of the cold one. They leave the role of the victim and put on the role of the awakened one. They leave an old dependency only to step into a new kind of arrogance. But a new mask is still a mask. Even if it looks deeper, even if it talks about healing, even if it quotes Jung, even if it uses words like shadow, persona, and individuation, an unintegrated ego can turn even awakening into a costume. And that is the third twist. Some people are not truly awakened. They have only upgraded their mask into a more spiritual version. They no longer say, "I am always right." They say, "Your energy does not align with my frequency." They no longer say, "I hate you." They say, "I am protecting my peace." They no longer manipulate with tears. They manipulate with the language of healing. Be careful. The shadow is very intelligent. It can wear the clothes of morality. It can speak in the voice of peace. It can hide inside the image of, "I have overcome everything." True integration does not make you rise above humanity. It makes you less delusional about yourself. You become less judgmental, but more clear. Less desperate to prove yourself, but harder to control. Less interested in winning, but no longer willing to let anyone step on your self-respect. That is the difference. The unintegrated person uses awareness to stand above others. The person who has begun to integrate uses awareness so they no longer betray themselves. And the deeper you go, the more you understand why most people are so afraid of the truth. Truth does not only break relationships, it breaks identities. Truth asks, who are you if you are no longer praised? Who are you if no one needs you? Who are you if you no longer have the role of saving others? Who are you if you no longer have the story of being the victim? Who are you if you no longer have your pain to explain your personality? That question is terrifying. Because many people have lived around their wounds for so long that they no longer know who they are, if that wound is not the center of everything. Some people do not want to heal. They only want their pain to be worshipped. Some people do not want freedom. They only want their prison decorated more beautifully. Some people do not want the truth. They only want a lie refined enough to let them keep living without seeing their own cowardice. That sentence is cold, but it is true. Not everyone searching for the light is ready to leave the darkness they know, because familiar darkness still gives them an identity. A person who has suffered for years may be afraid of peace, because peace takes away the excuse to keep being the old version of themselves. A person used to chaos may find healthy love boring, because their nervous system has mistaken intensity for meaning. A person raised in instability may sabotage stability, because peace leaves them not knowing what to do with themselves. This is the tragedy of survival. The thing that once saved you can become the thing that imprisons you. The mask that once helped you be accepted can become the coffin of your true self. And one day, you have to choose, not between good and bad, but between what is familiar and what is true. Familiar will be easier. Familiar has a clear road. Familiar has the old people, the old roles, the old reactions, the old wounds, the old way of living. You know how to suffer in that world. You know how to make peace. You know how to apologize. You know how to shrink. You know how to survive. But truth is different. Truth does not promise you will be loved more. Truth does not promise you will be understood. Truth does not promise you will not lose anyone. Truth promises only one thing. You will no longer lose yourself just to keep a seat in a room that is suffocating you. That is all. But for someone who has lived too long on validation, that is all can be terrifying enough. When you begin choosing truth, the outside world may look at you as if you are failing. You speak less, you socialize less, you react less, you are less willing to join meaningless conversations. You are no longer busy proving you are kind, no longer performing happiness, no longer rushing to make others comfortable through self-betrayal. From the outside, it may look like you are losing your softness, but inside, you are reclaiming your backbone. Some people will call that coldness. That is fine. Those who once benefited from your melting will always fear your new shape. You do not need to convince them. There are stages in life when explanation is only the old ego's final attempt to walk back onto the stage. Do not explain too much. Truth does not need to beg for recognition. Boundaries do not need a speech. Maturity does not need an audience. When the mask falls, the first thing you feel may not be freedom. It may be emptiness. because you realize you used too many things that were never truly yours to build the feeling of "this is who I am." Other people's approval, your role in the family, the way you were praised, the way you were needed, the way you were seen as good, the way you were allowed to exist as long as you made no one uncomfortable. One by one, those things fall away. And underneath them, there is no perfect version waiting. There is only you, no decoration, no role, no applause, no excuses, only you, and the truth that many things you once called your personality were actually survival reactions repeated long enough to look like identity. Does it hurt? Deeply. But this pain is clean. It is not like the pain of being insulted, not like the pain of being abandoned, not like the pain of begging for love from someone who does not know how to love. This is the pain of illusion leaving the body. It feels like shedding skin. It makes you sensitive, naked, vulnerable, but more real. And one day you realize you no longer want to become somebody. You only want to stop being the false thing you once used to survive. That is when individuation begins, not as a beautiful concept, but as a ruthless dismantling. You do not add more to yourself. You remove people-pleasing. You remove the fear of being disliked. You remove false humility. You remove the need to be seen as good. You remove the habit of explaining every decision. You remove your loyalty to places that only loved you when you stayed small. Layer by layer, it falls away. And every layer that falls will make someone uncomfortable because they thought that layer was you. Maybe you once thought so too, but it was not. You are not the mask. You are the one who grew exhausted from holding it up with both hands. And in the end, identity death is not destruction. It is the end of a lie that lasted too long, a lie that once helped you be loved, a lie that once helped you stay safe, a lie that once helped you belong. But still it was a lie, and when that lie dies, you will lose some people. You will lose some rooms, you will lose some habits, you will lose some versions of yourself that once received applause. But you will also lose something else. You will lose the need to keep betraying yourself just to remain somewhere that no longer belongs to you. That is not tragedy. That is liberation. Not loud, not glittering, not comfortable, but real. And if there is one thing more frightening than the mask falling, it is living your entire life without ever realizing you were wearing one. A person can grow old, become successful, be loved, be admired, be called kind, be seen as strong, and still never truly meet themselves. They only meet the versions that other people accepted. They live inside the role, they protect the role, they become angry when someone touches the role, and they call that identity. Do not mistake this. The real danger is not changing. The real danger is living too long inside a self that was only created to survive. Because one day, if the silence becomes deep enough, if the pain becomes honest enough, if the exhaustion becomes heavy enough, you will hear a crack inside. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. That is the sound of the mask slipping from your hands. And in that moment, you have two choices. You can bend down, pick it up, dust it off, put it back on, keep smiling, and keep being loved in the old way, or you can stand still. Let it fall. Let others see your confusion. Let yourself see your real face. Maybe not beautiful yet, not steady yet, not certain where to go yet, but at least no longer a performance. Truth does not have to be perfect to deserve to live, and neither do you. Like a lone rider at the edge of a dying town, you do not need to fire a shot. You do not need to prove your freedom. You simply stop wearing the badge that was never yours, step out of the dust, and let the old role die behind you. If this reached something inside you, comment. The mask is slowly slipping from my hands.